Hi, everybody. This is Dan Nichols. What you're looking at right now, I think we have a Mac PC conflict, but that's okay because it's the content that counts. On the line with us today, we've got Marcel Humphrey. Marcel is a wholesaler, a guru, an expert at making money in real estate. He used to work at the Social Security Administration, and as I heard in one of his videos, he was a paper pusher for years. I mean, what else do you do with the Social Security Administration, right, Marcel? I mean, you got a lot of papers to move.
Absolutely.
But, here's a critical difference. As he was looking out the window and had a dream and a vision of being a real estate investor, he did something a little bit different than what you may have done at this stage in your life. He took action on those dreams and actually went out and made some money in real estate. And where that's left him today is he no longer works for the Social Security Administration. Instead of having visions or dreams of collecting a retirement check after, 65 years in the federal government, Marcel is on his own. He does his own thing. He's on his own time, his own schedule. Gives him freedom and power, something all of us probably would enjoy a little more of. Marcel, it's great to have you on the line today.
Dan, thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to sharing my experiences, my knowledge, and even some of my mistakes during today's webinar training.
Yeah, we love mistakes, man. Especially
Absolutely.
Gurus got to share mistakes because that's what makes us all feel real,
Absolutely. A wise man once told me, Dan, that I would rather learn from someone who's already made all the mistakes than someone who professes not to have made any.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm in the same boat. Sometimes people say, hey, Dan, why should I learn from you? Because as I had shared with you earlier, Marcel, I deal with the psychology of entrepreneurship as a business coach also. And the reason is because I've done it the wrong way a lot too. So I help cut that learning curve.
Absolutely. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, the stage is yours, Marcel.
Okay, folks, glad everybody is tuning in today to myself and Dan's training webinar. We're going to talk about wholesaling. Wholesale and grow rich from scratch is today's training. And I say grow rich because wholesaling, I believe and I actually know that it's really the foundation of your real estate investing career. When you start wholesaling, you're going to learn values, you're going to learn negotiations, you're going to learn how to build a team, you're going to be interacting with different types of people, different types of other real estate investors from landlords to rehabbers, and you'll be able to pick their brains throughout your wholesaling career, which is eventually going to propel you into another niche, which will probably be either rehabbing or becoming a buy and hold investor, a landlord. So we're going to get started with actually who I am, my story. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I was born and raised here. I grew up like a lot of inner city kids with dreams and aspirations of becoming a professional athlete. From Little League to high school, I played football and basketball. And after high school, I pretty much watched my athletic dream evaporate, but I still had a passion and a dream to become wealthy. My first vehicle, I thought it was going to be athletics, and then I came across real estate investing. So I'm going to talk about that throughout this training. I actually lost both of my parents at an early age. I lost my mother at 12 and my father at 15 years old. So I hit a huge hurdle early in life, but I was blessed to have a grandmother to step in and actually become the mother and father figure. She made sure that, my brother and I stayed in school. We graduated from high school, and then we went on to college and graduated from college at the same time. So she kept us focused, and she kept us on the right track growing up. And now in 2002, while I was attending Morgan State University here in Baltimore, I was actually introduced to real estate investing. Now, I do have a background in entrepreneurship. I was actually involved in a network marketing company for about 2 years. So I caught the entrepreneurial bug very early at around 19 years old. But around 20, I was introduced to real estate, and I had read a book. It was crazy how this all worked out. I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which a lot of you probably have already read. If you haven't read that book yet, you need to read it. You need to go get it. But when I read that book, it totally changed my mindset on on business, on the 9 to 5, actually graduating from college, then going into corporate America. It totally changed my outlook and my mindset on the workforce. And from there, I met this gentleman on campus at this social gathering spot on campus called The Bridge. And The Bridge was a place where people, I'll be honest, people cut class and just socialize. So one day this guy comes up to me, a good friend of mine, and he says, Marcel, if I showed you a way to make 50 to 100% return on your investment, would that interest you? And I said, absolutely. He said, Marcel, give me $300 in 6 months, you're going to get $600 back. And I said, well, I'm not going to get that type of return, with my current savings account. I'm a college student. I really didn't have a lot of money, but I had about $300. So, the first question I asked him, I said, well, is this legal? What are you doing? Well, he said, I'm purchasing tax sale certificates. I'm investing in tax sales, tax liens. In the state of Maryland, we have tax liens. In other states around the country, you have the same. You also may have tax deeds. But in the state of Maryland, tax liens can be purchased around May each and every year. So anyway, this gentleman showed me how to purchase a tax lien certificate. And in 2002, I actually invested $850, and I didn't have $850 in my bank account at the time. What I did, I waited for my financial aid refund check to come in, and instead of going on a shopping spree, and we got our financial refund checks around spring break time, instead of taking a trip to Cancun, I took that $850 that I got as a refund at the end of each semester, and I invested that in my future. I took a risk, an educated risk, because I started studying more and researching more on the tax lien certificate process. So, make a long story short, I purchased my first tax lien certificate for $850. There were about $2,500 in legal expenses throughout this 18-month period, and I ended up selling my first property, buying my first property for $850, and then selling it for $25,000 minus the legal expenses. But I ended up making a profit on my first real estate deal of over $20,000. So that pretty much then got me hooked on real estate investing. Throughout those 18 months, I was trying to figure out a faster way to make money in real estate, and I discovered wholesaling. I discovered wholesaling in about 2004, and when I discovered wholesaling, I found that you can make money without putting any money down in a shorter period of time than the tax lien investing. So this just made a lot of sense. I found out that I can control a piece of real estate with no money down for anywhere from 30 to 60 days and then make a profit. It may not have been as big as the $20,000 profit, but I've been realizing profits anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000 wholesaling real estate since I discovered it. Now, you can call this beginner's luck, but my first wholesale deal, I actually made a profit of $34,000, but I made a very, very huge, big mistake. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've made was not educating myself. I just read a book at a local bookstore, and a lot of books don't tell you everything you need to know about a certain niche or a certain strategy. So this book pretty much showed me how to find properties, and I went out and found a property, put these properties under contract. It was actually one property that turned into 12 properties. The gentleman had 12 properties on one street here in Baltimore, Maryland, in Union Square, and I ended up putting these properties under contract on one sales contract. Now, in the state of Maryland, and I know this is the same thing all over the country, you have to use a separate sales contract for each property. They all had separate deeds. So that was mistake number one, but I ended up making $34,000 on my first deal, and later on in the training I'll go through how to avoid the mistake I made and how that deal actually got to the settlement table. In 2005, I co-founded APNHomebuyers.com with one of my college friends, Michael Jones, And right now, we're currently active rehabbers, wholesalers, and I'm a real estate coach right now. We've renovated over 25 houses in Baltimore City. So I'm going to go to the next slide. What you're going to learn today, you're going to learn what wholesaling is, why you need to do it. You're also going to learn one of my strategies. I'm an old school investor. I'm young, but I love old school investing techniques. You're going to learn how to drive for dollars. I call it cruising for cash. I'm going to show you how to find motivated sellers. I'm also going to show you effective offline marketing tactics for sellers. And also I'm going to show you some tactics to find buyers, because you need buyers to fuel your wholesaling business. I'm also going to show you how to get to the closing table and how to stay in the game and win. Dan talked about mindset. You definitely have to have a mindset for this business, for the real estate business, especially the wholesaling niche. I'm also going to show you how to determine values, the ARV, that's the after repair value, and the AIP. The AIP, this is something that I've never really shared with the public before. This is something that a lot of my coaching clients it was a challenge that my coaching clients were running into, and I had to figure something out to get them through this challenge, and it's due to the new economy we're in. So I'm going to talk about the AIP and what that is. You're also going to learn about the wholesale deal launch formula, how to sell your properties, get your properties sold in 7 to 14 days, and also have some some case studies that we'll go through as well today. So, how to control and profit. What is wholesaling? Wholesaling is wholesaling is controlling a property and making a profit for doing that. Basically finding a motivated seller, agreeing on a price that the seller is willing to take, and it's usually going to be a price lower than the appraised value of the property, putting that property under contract, and then selling higher than what you have that property under contract for, but still low, to someone like myself or like Dan, who's a cash buyer. So if you sell the property a little higher than what you put it under contract for, you can actually put yourself in a position to realize those profits in between the price that you put the property under contract for and the price you're selling it to a cash buyer for. And then setting a closing date and going to get paid. That's all wholesaling is. Very simple, very easy to do, and there's no risk involved. So why do you need to do this? Why do you need to do this right now? Well, right now is the best time to invest in real estate, period. The housing market crashed around 2007, 2008, meaning prices went down. We were in an inflated market, in a boom. The market was booming from 03 to 06 in my marketplace, even parts of 07, different neighborhoods in Baltimore were still booming. But it's taken a dip. We're now finding properties. We literally bought a property for $50 a couple of weeks ago in my marketplace. Now, this property was a fire-damaged property. The property owner already had gotten a check from the insurance company, did not want anything to do with the property after it burned down. They were a tired landlord, and they let this property go for $50. Now, we sold this property to another investor for $2,000. So these are the type of opportunities that are out here today in my marketplace, and I know for a fact in other marketplaces around the country. Another reason why you need to get in is minimal risk. Wholesaling is minimal to no risk. No risk meaning if you gain the specialized knowledge and the training. So I want to commend everybody for being on the training today, because you're going to learn from a lot of my mistakes, and essentially you're not going to have any risk because I've already laid the roadmap out for you today. The profits are immediate. We're talking about 30-day turnarounds. 14 days. I'll show you how to get to this settlement table in 14 days. You got to remember, my first deal, it took about 18 months to realize my profits. I was searching for a faster way to make money in real estate. capital and credit not needed. You don't need any money or credit. Nobody's going to run your credit to do this. Dollars per hour. That deal that we contracted for $50 and then sold for $2,000. I mean, think about it. We did not put a lot of time into that deal. We hung up a Bandit sign. Someone called us from an advertisement, and I'm going to talk about Bandit sign marketing in tonight's webinar. We took a call. We met the seller, put the property under contract. About 2 hours worth of time. That's almost $1,000 an hour, folks. I mean, where in America, in the world, can you make $1,000 per hour at your day job right now? There's thousands of vacant properties in Baltimore. Statistics have shown that there's anywhere from 30 to 40,000 vacant properties, and that's going to increase due to the amount of foreclosures that are coming down the road right now. And this is all over the country. There are hundreds of thousands of vacant properties all over the country right now. So that's why you need to do this. And the last reason, you want to make a difference. I have a vested interest in the communities and neighborhoods in my city. I grew up here, and every time we buy a house, when we first started A+ Neighborhood Home Buyers, we said that we were going to change neighborhoods one house at a time. We wanted to renovate a ton of properties, and what we ended up discovering is that we couldn't renovate every single property. So when we discovered wholesaling, we started selling these properties to other investors who were doing the same things, renovating these homes. And these neighborhoods, some of these neighborhoods weren't, first-class type of neighborhoods. These neighborhoods were on the fringe of war zones, but going in and renovating a vacant property and still having homeowners that live in this neighborhood, you'll be surprised the effect that it has on the community and the neighborhood. We literally had neighbors coming out after our renovations and during our projects, coming out thanking us for renovating some of these vacant properties, because these vacant properties, they're breeding grounds for crime, vandalism, squatters, people moving into the properties that have no ownership and aren't paying any rent. And in Baltimore, we have a drug problem here, and some of these houses, I hate to say it, were crack houses that we've renovated. So we've actually been able to go into certain neighborhoods, clean up these properties, raise these properties back up. And not only that, since we've picked up the specialized knowledge of wholesaling, we've been able to spread the wealth by letting other investors in on deals that we didn't have the resources or the time to take on ourselves. So we're actually helping our community. So that's making the difference, and you'll be able to do the same thing after today's training. So I'm going to go right into the meat and potatoes of this. The first strategy that I'm going to go over is cruising for cash. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is actually how I got started. When I started investing in tax sale certificates, there was a huge auction. There was a huge auction at the Baltimore Convention Center. Now, that was 2002. Now, in 2011, everything's online now. So the auction now is held online. But in 2002, when the auction, all the big-time investors, even from all across the country, used to come into Baltimore, and they used to bid on these properties. Well, at the end of the auction, a book was released, and it was about the size of a phone book. It was released to the general public, and it only cost $4. So I made a $4 investment, and then I made an $850 investment. So I made an $854 investment on my first deal. Now, this book had a list of all the properties and the taxes, the amount of taxes that were owed on the property, and basically I would get out of class and I would drive around Baltimore looking at these properties that I thought were possibly good investments. So this is where the cruising for cash strategy came from. I actually started learning my marketplace simply by driving around the city. I would do MapQuest. I didn't have a GPS at the time, so I would use MapQuest, and I would literally drive the city looking at properties that I thought would be good investments. But one thing that I noticed was that there were other properties that weren't listed on this tax sale list that were actually vacant. And I always was wondering, how could I make money with these vacant properties? I'm coming across a lot of vacant properties. So when I discovered wholesaling, I just implemented that strategy, cruising for cash. We're going to talk about how to cruise for cash. And you can do this. Literally, you can cruise for cash. I don't care if you have a 9 to 5, if you're in college right now, if you don't have a car. We call it strolling for dollars. You can do this. Simply taking 20 addresses a day. And there's 5 days in a week. I know everybody on this training call can do this. Taking down 20 vacant property addresses a day, that's going to equal 100 in a week. It's 5 days in a week, 20 times 5 is 100. You can come up with 100 possible leads in the next 5 days. You can implement this in your current travels. On your way to work, just start looking around. Start looking at the properties in your neighborhood. You know, maybe take a different route to work or leaving your job. Go into a neighborhood that you've never been in before. Trust me, you'll discover vacant properties. I don't care if it's a very astute neighborhood or it's a low-income neighborhood. You'll be able to find a vacant property in our current marketplace. Take a friend or partner. If you're out with your wife going to the movies, if you're going to the grocery store, make it fun. If you have your children with you, you know, two heads. You hear saying 2 heads are better than 1. You know, 4 eyes are better than 2. Take a friend and tell them. You know, when we're cruising for cash, I always tell someone that you have the right side, I have the left side, and we're looking, you know, at all of these properties, driving down the street, taking down these vacant properties. Take a voice recorder. When I actually started, I was using a notepad, and then I started using my cell phone, and I found that the cell phone is kind of dangerous. There's a new law in Maryland that you can't use cell phones, so just take a voice recorder, press record, put it down, sit it down in your car, and start cruising for cash, taking down those addresses, and take another route. So we just talked about some of the ways you can start cruising for cash. So what are you actually going to be looking for? That's what we want to find out. What are you going to be looking for while you're out cruising for cash? Well, here's actually a success story of someone that I've worked with. This is Terry. Terry is actually from Taiwan. He's actually a college professor here in Maryland. And Terry actually used the cruising for cash strategy on one of his first deals. And he realized profits of over $3,000. $3,000, folks. And Terry had no real estate experience. He actually told me before he started wholesaling, he never interacted with folks outside of his job. He's a scientist, and he's a professor at a local university here, and he said that he never even interacted with folks outside of his profession. So it was kind of a challenge at first for Terry, but let me tell you, Terry has closed 4 more deals since this part-time, and he used the cruising for cash strategy. So how do you use the cruising for cash strategy? The one thing that you need to do, you need to know about the signs of a vacant house. Right here, you have a picture of phone books on a sidewalk in front of a property, or newspapers. If you're driving down the street, if you're walking through your neighborhood and you come across a house that has a stack of phone books or newspapers in the driveway, on the sidewalk, on a porch, that's a telltale sign of a vacant property. You also have a picture here of a window with distorted, broken up window blinds. And these are like some dirty looking, dingy window blinds in a window. You can actually tell if a property is vacant just by looking at the blinds in a window. If they're distorted, if they're dingy looking, that's a sign that the house isn't being kept up. And in my marketplace and all over the country, I've found and discovered that, you know, that's happening all over. When you see this, when you see these blinds distorted and looking really dingy, that's a vacant house. You also have high grass. That's another sign of a vacant house. Right now, it's springtime. Going into the summer, you're going to see a lot of properties where the lawn hasn't been kept up. There's no landscaping. If you go into a neighborhood and everybody else's home, their yard has been taken care of, it's been cut, the hedges have been trimmed, and you have one property where this hasn't been done, that's another telltale sign of a vacant property.
Or at least
overloaded mailboxes.
Yeah,
another
extremely disinterested owner, right? I mean, it's one of the two.
Absolutely, Dan. Absolutely. I mean, they're either going through some type of financial hardship or the house has been left vacant. Another thing that we find in our marketplace, and I know other wholesalers are finding in their marketplace, are properties with no window blinds at all, where you can look through the front of the property and look straight through to the back of the property, and there's no furniture. It's just an abandoned property. If you're up north, I know, Dan, you're up in Michigan, you probably experience a lot of snow in the winter, as we do here in Maryland. When you're cruising for cash and you go through a neighborhood where everybody else's house has been shoveled as far as the snow, and then there's one house like this house here that hasn't, then there's something going on with that property. I would definitely try to get in contact with that property owner. So, are there other signs of vacant houses? Absolutely. Especially in Baltimore, in Maryland, and probably other urban settings, boarded up houses. We have a ton of boarded up properties, and we go after those all the time. These are other signs of motivation. Important documents posted to a property. And I want to go into building your buyer's list as well right here. Important documents. Whenever you drive down the street and you see a property, or you're walking past a property and you see some documents, some papers posted to the front door or in the window, and I'm going to talk about the in the window stuff in a few seconds, but those documents may get you in direct contact with the property owner, whether it's a fine from the local municipality or the city, or there's a permit in the window. And I'm going to talk about permits, but one thing that you want to stay away from if you're just starting out wholesaling are signs that say winterized. These are bank-owned properties. Now, you can wholesale bank-owned properties, but there's a little more risk involved, and I recommend that you have this basic grassroots knowledge before you start wholesaling REOs, because there's some risk and there's a language that you need to know when dealing with real estate agents. But you're going to come across properties right now in this current economy that have signs that say bank-owned or winterized. You want to pass up on those properties. You're looking for other important documents like upcoming tax lien foreclosure, fines from the current city, like code enforcement documents posted to the door. And you're also going to look for permits. In my marketplace, if you're going to do any type of construction, you have to pull a building permit, and you have to post it on the property so the folks on the outside can see in, and this is for the inspectors that can see this permit posted. But on these permits, it usually gives you the date that the permit was pulled, the property owner's name, the property owner's mailing address, and a lot of times it'll give you the property owner's direct phone number, meaning their cell phone number. Now, if you come across a permit that was issued in 2009, and you see that there's no work hasn't been completed, that's a sign that that property owner probably ran out of funds. So going after properties with important documents posted to the doors or windows is very, very important. So get out your cars, walk up on these properties, and start reading these documents, because you won't believe what you'll find just by taking that step and getting out and doing just a little due diligence. It's right there for you. Fire damage, we talked about that earlier. We just picked up a property here in our marketplace for $50. Fire damage properties, don't pass up on them. Investors, rehabbers, landlords, they will take these deals on, and they will raise these properties. They will renovate these properties. Newspapers, a lot of people sleep on newspaper advertising. You can find motivated sellers marketing in newspapers, and also if you start putting ads in your local classified sections, you got to think about it. You want to be places where everybody isn't. Everybody right now is online, but there's still folks that are picking up the newspaper. So there's not a lot of competition if you market in the newspaper, and if you look in the newspaper for people that want to sell their houses. People are still putting for sale by owner ads in the newspaper that are motivated. They're motivated sellers. And if you start placing ads in these newspapers, and let me tell you, you can find some really good ads in newspapers right now because newspapers are hurting. They need people to advertise with them. So while everybody's marketing for buyers and sellers on Craigslist and all the other online medias, don't leave out the offline media of newspaper classified ads. Blue tarps. Blue tarps. You'll see these blue tarps on houses, on the roofs of properties. This is a telltale sign of a potential motivated seller. When you see a blue tarp, something's going on. You know, the roof is damaged and the property owner hasn't repaired the roof. Number one reason why they haven't repaired the roof is lack of money, lack of resources. They need cash right now. So you can pick up properties, you can put properties under contract, you know, that have these blue tarps. You can find motivated sellers by targeting properties in your marketplace that have blue tarps on the roof. And construction stopped. I talked about that as far as important documents. As far as the permits, construction stopped. You know, folks ran out of money. I was actually one of them. In 2007, the market crashed, and I actually had a contractor who actually just walked out in the middle of 7 projects. And that was a very, very hard time. And it really was from lack of knowledge. I didn't educate myself properly on the rehab process. I jumped in pretty much like everybody else around the country did when the real estate was booming, buying properties and just trying to do rehabs. And I made a ton of mistakes but still made a lot of profits, but that was only due to the way the market was. I mean, you could literally buy a house and sell it 12 months later and still make a profit. It's just because of the way the market was. But now there's very, very small room for error. And that's one of the things that, you know, I teach. I teach from my mistakes and my experiences. So wholesaling, you know, my first mistakes was, you know, not putting, you know, the properties on separate contracts. And one of my first mentors always told me, he said, Marcel, don't ever throw away any of your documentation, any of your contracts. And the buyer for those 12 properties saw that I was a newbie, and this person actually took advantage of me on my first wholesale deal where I did make $34,000. But let me go into that deal in more detail. There were 12 properties that I put under contract for $500,000 here in Baltimore, and this was while I was still in college. I marked those properties up to $600,000 once I put these properties under contract, and I marketed these properties on Craigslist, and I looked in the paper, looking to see if there were any investors buying, and I started reaching out to some investors, and I had 3 calls on these properties. Now, make a long story short, one of the calls was from an attorney, actually, who bought real estate, and she explained to me that she was very interested in these properties. She wanted to see the properties. I went on and showed her these properties, and she said, it's going to take me a week. I'm going to do some due diligence, and I'll present an offer to you. So she presented the offer of $556,000. So literally, I put myself in a position to make $56,000 on my first deal. Now, she went on, you know, telling me that she wanted to put a contract on these properties, and I let her know that I had these properties under contract. We have to do an assignment fee, an assignment contract, and she actually took control of the deal. When I forwarded her the original sales contract, she let me know that she needed to rewrite the contracts and she needed to get in contact with the property owner. Now, it was a good thing that this property owner was upfront and honest with me. We had built a really good relationship, but she basically put these she took control of the entire deal and put these properties under contract with her name on it and the property owner. So I essentially was pretty much worked out of the deal due to the lack of my knowledge. But she did write an operating agreement stating what she was going to do, and she was going to pay me this $56,000 in monthly payments. Well, anyway, fast forward, she actually started making, when she closed on the property, she actually broke that $56,000 into payments, and she paid me for 3 months, about 3 to 4 months, and she ended up, after like the 4th month, she stopped making these payments. But I remembered what my first mentor told me. He said, don't get rid of any of your documentation. So I saved that contract, and I started building a team. I kept wholesaling. I learned from that mistake, and I ended up meeting my real estate attorney, who's still my real estate attorney today. And it took about a year later when I showed him, I presented him this contract. I was like, hey, this was a deal that I did about a year ago, and I haven't been paid on it since October. And he told me, look, you have this in writing. She cut checks. You have a clear-cut case. So we ended up settling, and on my first deal, I ended up totaling net profit $34,000. So that was my first mistake, and that was my last mistake in wholesaling real estate, losing control of a deal. And that's one of the main things that you have to learn how to do. So you know how to find vacant properties now. You know, how do you get in contact with these property owners? Well, in the state of Maryland, yes, Dan.
Let me just interject for a second. I want to get something clear because I'm not understanding something.
Okay.
Okay, so like one of the ways you can buy wholesale stuff, and you already referred to that once, which is through bank-owned properties. So you can get wholesale that way.
Yeah.
You said you got to be a little more careful, and my guess is that's because bank-owned is a little more litigious, and you got to worry. You know, you may have to come up with money and some of the other things because they're going to require that, or they may require that.
Absolutely.
But in this case, you part of my I guess my non-understanding of this wholesale process, because everybody listening right now, I've never done wholesaling. I always did buy with cash, fix it up, and then sell it. You know, kind of like what Jamel Gibbs calls in what is it, buy and pray.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's called hope investing. You know, you actually hope you get your money back, and thankfully I did most of the time.
Right.
But, so here's the part I'm confused about on the wholesaling end is you are getting these properties in a situation like you said, Dan. You got to look for properties that are, you know, not shoveled, the blinds are broken up, you know, and I know that because like that's how I would buy rehabs a very similar way. But you know, a lot of times these things are sitting on, they got cash, or they're owed for 3 years back taxes. You know, at least in Michigan, that's how it works. So these people may owe $5 or $6 grand in back taxes.
Absolutely.
And the house isn't worth $5 or $6 grand. I wouldn't give. I may in Detroit especially because I know the market. I might give $500 or $600. You know,
right.
Or $50 or $60. You know?
Well, I've heard that you can buy, Dan, properties in Detroit like that, and that's one thing that I'm going to go into, and that's the AIP, and that's pretty much knowing value. So if you know that, you know, the property isn't worth what the taxes are owed, you know, then that's a deal that you're not going to want to take on or even pursue. And there's ways of finding that out, and definitely this process that I'm teaching today is basically a grassroots wholesaling strategy where you're finding virgin deals. These are deals that aren't on the MLS that nobody really knows about. And as a wholesaler, especially if you're beginning, this is an ideal way to build your business, finding exclusive deals that nobody else knows about, offering these virgin deals to your marketplace that no other investor has seen because you've actually done the due diligence and got in contact with these property owners and negotiated some really good prices. And now you're offering them to your marketplace at a deeply discounted price as well.
Right, right. And once again, to everybody listening, especially you newbies, and though he hasn't said it exactly, getting rid of the property and having that buyer kind of thing lined up is more important. And I don't usually say it that way because I would almost usually say as or more. But I would say it's more important to have your buyer lined up than it is to have your seller. I mean, you can find sellers, but finding the buyers, the people that are going to allow you to profit on the deal, is every bit as, and I would actually lean towards more important than actually knowing, you know, because sellers you can find deals, but you got to have a place to unload them. Right, Marcel?
Absolutely, Dan. You have to have buyers. And if you go back to that cruising for cash strategy, I'm going to go back to that slide, the important documents. So when you're cruising for cash, you're also looking for buyers as well. So those are the documents, those permits in the windows, they have investors' contact information. So if we're in 2011, you come across a property and there's nobody doing work there, but there's a permanent window that was issued in 2011, that's an active investor. That's an active rehabber who you need to get in contact with. And also on the weekends or throughout the week, I know a lot of you are working, but on the weekends you're not. When you're off driving around, construction may be going on in certain neighborhoods at properties. Simply get out your car and start networking with the contractors. A lot of times you'll find that the owner is there on the weekend managing their projects. So that's a way to start building up your buyers list, to start fueling your wholesaling business. Excellent point, Dan. Thanks.
Yep.
So how do you find the property owners? How do you find the property owners? In Maryland, we have the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation. You can Google this under Maryland property data. If you're in Michigan, you can Google Michigan property data. But these sites actually are databases for all of the property owners in your marketplace. To get more detailed, this is a property in Baltimore on a street called Cold Spring Lane, and this is actually owned by someone in Washington, D.C. This property that's located here in Baltimore is owned by someone here in Washington, D.C. So this was a property that I found that was vacant at a certain period of time, and I just simply typed in the property address that I discovered, and it came up with this this information. It gives me the property owner's name, their mailing address. It lets me know that it's not their principal residence, and it gives me a little bit of more information on the property. Now, you're probably wondering, how do you access your property data in your marketplace? How do you access the website, this type of website in your marketplace? Well, I discovered a website called netraonline.com. Netraonline.com is the home to every single property data site throughout the country. Now, Maryland is free. I mean, most of these property data sites are free. I believe California, there's a fee-based site available to the public, but for the most part, all of these sites, these property data sites, are free, and this is where you can find information on the property owners of these vacant properties. Not only that, you can also start building your buyers list. So this person in Washington, D.C. has a property here in Baltimore. I'm going to contact them to see if they're looking to sell this property, but I'm also going to contact them to see if they're looking to buy more property. So you always want to be in buyers list building mode. I'm going to go down into another strategy that I've used, and this pay close attention to this. I call this farming neighborhoods from behind a computer, and I use one of the best tools on the internet right now is Google Maps. And say, for instance, that property on Cold Spring Lane that I just pulled up on the Maryland property data search. Say, for instance, I want to find more properties. I got in contact with the property owner who's in Washington, D.C., and I discovered that they want to buy more properties in that neighborhood. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into Google Maps. I'm going to type the address in of that property that I first discovered on Cold Spring, and I'm going to look at the streets surrounding that property. And when you type in the address of a property in any marketplace, it's going to appear on Google Maps, and then you're going to see other streets. Now, when I look through these other streets, I have a notepad out, and I'm taking down each street surrounding that property. So I'm going to take at least 10 streets. So if you look at this picture, there's over like at least 15 streets here. I'm going to take down 10, and then I'm going to go back to my property data search, and I'm just going to type in the name of that street. And when you do that on most of the property databases, you can just simply, you don't need an address. You can type in a name of the street, and every property on that street will come up. Now, one of the key things to look for is we're looking for absentee owners. These are people, these are investors that own properties that don't live in the properties but may live in another marketplace or live in that same marketplace but just don't live in that property. and you can check by seeing if it's their principal residence. Seeing if it's their principal residence. And in our marketplace, it'll either say yes or no. And in several other marketplaces, it may say non-owner occupied. But simply by just going to Google Maps, taking you down at least 10 streets and running them through your property database, you can pretty much find out who all the absentee owners are. And from there, you got to take action to get in contact with them to see if they're thinking about selling or buying more properties. And I'm going to go into some scripts really soon. So how do you get in contact with these absentee owners, with these vacant property owners? This is a resource that I've been using for the last 6 years. And folks, wholesaling is a contact sport. I mean, you have to make contact with folks. This resource, I'm not getting paid to advertise this. This is a tool that I've been using for 6 years. There's no affiliate link here. This is called Private Eye. You can find this website at privateeye.com. This website is very, very powerful. It's a online skip trace system. Literally 80 to 90% of the time, you can find the property owner's contact information. The type of information that this site gives you is the property owner's age, all their mailing addresses that they've ever had, any properties that they own. There's a property search, so if I type in Dan Nichols, then I can find out every single property that you've owned, any companies that you started. I can find out your LLC's information, your phone numbers, your relatives, ages and names, their phone numbers. This is a huge, huge tool that you need if you're going to plan on doing a wholesaling business or even starting out in real estate, because the folks, if you can find a motivated seller who doesn't have a for sale sign up in front of their house and discover that they are motivated and they need to sell, it's a tremendous factor in your success in this business. So Private Eye is a must-have. If there's anything that you could take away from this webinar, this is a resource that I've been using for 6 years, and it's worked wonders. We've bought 70% of our properties through cold calling potential motivated sellers. And here's the script that we've been using. And before I go into the script, you can also use in Private Eye, it's fee-based. It's like $40 a month, $49 a month, but it's well worth it. But if you don't have $49 a month, you have national information. You can get up to 3 searches on one call, 716-555-1212, simply giving them the property owner's name, the property owner's address, and have them doing a search through 411, the current your information line. So what script do you use once you get in contact with these potential motivated sellers? Well, this is a cruising for cash script that I've used and that I teach all of my clients to use, and it works. You can tweak it. This is my personality, but it's a basic script. Hello, may I speak to Dan Nichols? My name is Marcel. I'm free. How are you today? That's the first thing I'm going to say to someone that I'm calling. I'm going to ask them how they're doing, because they don't know me from a can of paint. From a can of paint, I'm trying to build some type of rapport. And then I'll go on and say, well, Dan, I happen to be driving through a neighborhood, and I came across a property that you own at, we're going to say 123 Main Street, and I noticed it looked vacant. I just wanted to reach out to you, give you a call to let you know I'm buying houses in that particular neighborhood, and I wanted to see if you were ever interested in selling the property. That's all you have to say once you find out these property owners' phone numbers. And Dan's either going to say yes, no, or no. It's that simple. If he says no, I'm not going to let him off the hook. I'm going to say, well, Dan, I know you're not selling right now, but are you open to buying properties right now? Are you open to taking a look at some other investment deals that may fit your buying criteria? And Dan probably is going to say yes. If the deal makes sense, he'll take a look at it. So what I'm doing here is building my buyer's list. You're going to still want to build your buyer's list. And I call it a 3 strikeout rule. So I struck out once with Dan trying to sell me seeing if he wanted to sell me his house. I got up the plate again to see if he was looking to buy, and he wanted to buy. Now, I also run a tenant placement business here. Dan's the landlord. If Dan's not buying, Dan has a vacant property. He needs a tenant in that property so he can start making money each and every month, and it's not a liability to him anymore. It's an asset, a cash flowing asset. So I offer Dan, well, Dan, I know you're not buying right now. I know you're not selling. I know your property is vacant. Are you looking for a tenant? And Dan may say, yes, I'm looking for a tenant. Well, Dan, I offer tenant placement services. And I'll place a tenant in Dan's property, so I don't let him off the hook. I try to offer something. I try to let Dan know that there's something in it for him, just for talking to me today. I try to offer some type of resource and try to add some value to his current real estate business. And it's going into building relationships and building rapport. So this is the cold call script that we use, that we have used to buy, and we currently use, and have bought over 70% of the properties that we've controlled and bought since we started our business. So I'm going to go into the next slide, and this is going into the absentee owner script. And you want to write these down and start implementing these, today, tonight, when you start, as soon as you get off of this webinar. When you start looking for properties in your marketplace, some of you probably already have lists of vacant properties. Start making these calls. Hello, may I speak to, we're going to say Dan is the absentee owner again. Dan, my name is Marcel. I'm calling in reference to one of your houses on 123 Main Street. I happen to be doing some research on the internet. Remember, we use Google Maps and the property data websites to find out who these absentee owners were. Dan, I just wanted to reach out to you to let you know I'm buying houses in that particular neighborhood. Just wanted to know if you were interested in selling that property. And folks, this is where the negotiations are going to start. This is where the negotiations are going to start. When you make that first contact with that property owner, we're going to say Dan wants to sell his property that I called about. And I'm going to go into negotiations really, really soon. But these are the scripts that you want to use. Now, let's say Dan is a landlord. I found Dan's information at the local courthouse. This is a gold mine, folks. Finding angry landlords, folks that aren't getting rent from their tenants. In my marketplace, there's a courthouse where every landlord has to file an eviction, and this paperwork is public record. Now, Dan talked about earlier the importance of having buyers for your wholesale deals. Well, we use this strategy for finding buyers and for finding motivated sellers. Most of the landlords in our marketplace and around the country, they own more than one rental property. So we'll go down to the courthouse here in Baltimore, and we research what we call the pinks, the pink slips. These are eviction notices that are actually accessible to the public that landlords all over the country, it may not be called the pinks in your marketplace, but have to file before they evict a tenant. So they have to file this paperwork down at the local courthouse, and it's accessible to the public. Now, on this paperwork, it gives you the landlord's name, the landlord's mailing address, and the landlord's direct phone number, usually their cell phone number. Folks, do you realize the gold mine here?
Yeah.
Finding out.
Hey, Marcel, hang on a second. Anybody listening to this right now, if you don't think that's just absolutely mining for gold, I mean, he just gave you a huge piece there. I've never heard that strategy. And
absolutely.
I mean, he's giving you good content here. This is great. I was even thinking you were going to say something about just sort of sitting there and meeting landlords as they come in to file the eviction. But I like the idea of just going right in there and looking for the pinks, as you said. I mean, that is so cool. That is such a cool strategy and so simple to do, man. What I like is that you're not driving around, trying to find motivated sellers necessarily. You can go and find motivated landlords.
Absolutely. You can find motivated landlords, Dan. And folks tuning in, you got to realize every strategy that I've showed you, except using the private eye tool, is free. I mean, you don't even need to use private eye if you're just starting out and you have you don't have $49 a month. There are other websites where you can find these potential motivated sellers. 411.com, zabasearch.com. That's Z-A-B-A search.com. All of the strategies that I'm showing you, you don't need any money out of your pocket. So going to the courthouse, finding out where landlords file for evictions in your local marketplace is key to, one, finding motivated sellers, two, building that buyer's list, reaching out to them. And you can tweak the cold call scripts that I went over earlier to fit this strategy. So we're going to go into another strategy, and say that you can't find that courthouse in your marketplace. You can't get in contact with a landlord going to the courthouse because that municipality doesn't make it public record. Well, and say, gas is kind of high right now. You don't want to leave your home because you're on a tight budget, and if you drive downtown, it's going to be an expense to you. Well, everything's online now. It's a great online resource. Go section8.com. This is where you can start wholesaling properties all over the country. Not only that, you can find buyers all over the country for your properties. As you saw earlier in the training, there was a property owner who owned a house here in Baltimore, but they were in Washington, D.C. They lived in Washington, D.C. So you literally, at this website, gosection8.com, you can find landlords all over the country. Now, these are properties. Now, let me go into gosection8.com first. When you're here as a wholesaler, you're going to have to register, and it's totally free to register, as a tenant. Okay, this gives you access to the properties in your marketplace that are for rent. Now, one of the things here that I love is that, number one, it's free. Number two, it gives you the property address of the landlord, okay, of the property that the landlord's renting. It also gives you the landlord's contact number. It's usually a 1-800 number, but it gives you direct access to them. If you call that 1-800 number, it will either call their office or their cell phone or their home. Number three, you can, if you're shy, if you don't want to do any cold calling, you can send them an instant message, an email, right through this website, and it's totally free. This is the property. I recently did a training down in Orlando, Florida, and this was part of that presentation, but I just brought up a property in Orlando, Florida, and it gives you some interesting information here. It gives you what the landlord is looking to get per month. It also gives you the deposit. It gives you the number of bedrooms, the number of baths. It gives you the date listed, and that's really, really key, and the date that it's available. And it also gives you a chance to request more details. And this is where you're going to actually put in your contact information, your email, your phone number, and you can send that landlord a message. Now, you see that there's a phone number here where you can actually reach out to the landlord. But if you're not the type of person that likes to make cold calls and you're kind of nervous about it, don't worry about it. This site, gosection8.com, gives you the opportunity to reach out to the landlord via message. So if you're a seasoned wholesaler, if you're new, this is a really good resource. A lot of times when we're marketing to landlords for deals that we have, so if I had a deal in Orlando, Florida, in the neighborhood of this Dardanelle Drive property, I would email this landlord and say, hey, I have a property not far from one of your rental properties. Here's a link to my website, to my blog, to my Craigslist post, where you can actually see pictures. And if you're interested, you can give me a call. So I'm hitting up landlords, every time I get a deal. And not only that, I'm calling these landlords to see if they have any other properties that they're looking to rent out, because remember, I do tenant placement, and also if they have any properties, including this one, that they may be interested in selling. So gosection8.com is another gold mine, and it's online. You don't have to leave your house to do this. Another strategy, Bandit signs. And right now there's a lot of controversy around Bandit signs, and a lot of investors, a lot of wholesalers are always asking the question, are Bandit signs legal? And in my marketplace, they're totally not. They're illegal. But I'm going to show you a legal way to actually put your bandit signs up. The the code enforcement, they work throughout the week, Monday through Friday. On the weekends, you can put your signs up in your marketplace. But on Sunday night or Monday morning, before the start of the workday, you need to take your signs down. Now, to be totally out of the gray area here, if you have a property under contract, or if you own properties, put a We Buy Houses sign in front of that property, or put several We Buy Houses signs out in front of that property. These are bandit signs. You can get these bandit signs for pennies. 100 signs for $50 to $100. There's a website called banditsigns.com. We use both printed signs and blank bandit signs. The printed signs, you're going to run, your cost is going to go up to possibly around $150, $180, but it's well worth the investment. Just imagine if you put out a bandit sign, you spent about $100 for 100 signs, and you get a deal like the one I talked about earlier for $50, and you sell it for $2,000. That's a huge return on your investment. So bandit signs are very, 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 very important to use, especially if you're just starting out. You can even build your buyers list using these bandit signs as well. So if you get a property under contract, you need to stick a sign in front of that property with the price that you're selling that property for. Here's another success story. This is Jamal Gardner. He's actually a public school administrator here in Baltimore, Maryland, who used the bandit sign strategy. He's holding up a check here for $10,000. If you look at some of the other checks, and these are recent deals. This is less than a year ago. Checks here for $14,000, $13,000. These are the type of profits that you can make by simply taking action, folks. You're learning a lot on this training call. I hope you're taking notes, but don't just take these notes. Apply what you've learned, what you're learning here from me and Dan today, and going out and taking action. Another strategy.
One thing on the bandit signs, and it references a comment you made earlier, which was, go where other people aren't. And I think, like a lot of times, one of the things I discovered, and you've already referred to it, of course, is, like the newspaper advertising. Everybody and their brother's going to Craigslist, right? So it's like, well, okay, it's like, to me, it's like a shell game. Well,
right.
While everybody's looking over there, I'm going to try to capture this other pond of people that nobody else is fishing in. And the bandit signs allow you to target into very specific areas into a place that nobody else is, because a lot of these people that are in these neighborhoods, they may not have access to Craigslist. They may not have internet in their homes. I certainly know in the city of Detroit that's not a priority, is for people to have internet in their homes, but they got a cell phone, and they can make a phone call. So the bandit sign thing rocks, and one of my little tips on the bandit signs is I'm 6'4". And I know that if I hang a bandit sign, it's not likely that everybody can tear it down. But another little trick I used to do is I'd drive my van up alongside, and I'd get on the edge of my van, and that'd get me up another like 5 feet. So I'd have a bandit sign that was up like 11 feet high. And
wow.
It wasn't likely the neighbors could come by and knock it down. So that was the big gimmick, to try to keep them staying. You got to keep them up there, otherwise they're all gone. Somebody tears them down, and then you get busted for littering.
Right.
Now your signs are all over the neighborhood. You could get a fine for littering because your bandit signs are on the lawns. So anyway, all right.
Absolutely. Hey, Dan, that was a great tip. And one way to avoid those fines is to use a Google Voice, because they'll track your cell phone bill, your cell phone number. I don't know how they do it, but they'll send you a fine in the mail, because some way the city governments, the municipalities have access to this personal information. But if you use a Google Voice, which is totally free, they can't trace that number and send you out a fine. So setting up a Google Voice account, you got to have a Gmail account, but you can set up a Google Voice where it's an untraceable number. So, and that Dan gave an excellent tip, getting your Bandit signs up high. And if you don't have a van, just take a stepping stool or a ladder and get your signs up. And there's other tools out here that you can use to get your Bandit signs up higher, because the higher you get them, the longer they're going to stay and the more calls you're going to get.
Right. Right. Yeah, because that would be, it was kind of a no-brainer, because while we were driving around looking for properties, I just hang signs as I was going. But what the heck did you say? I'm trying to think what you said about the the Google Voice. Yeah, that, and the other I had another guy on that mentioned something about, what are they, like burner phones or whatever, like the cheap phones where you get.
Oh yeah, the Cricket phones, the Boost Mobiles.
Yeah, that's another strategy, I guess. So.
Absolutely. So these strategies all work, and you don't have to use each and every one of them. I mean, take one, like Bandit signs, or GoSection8.com if you don't have a budget for Bandit signs, and just focus on that one strategy. Trust me, you'll get to a deal. You'll find a potential motivated seller. You'll start building your buyers list. Word of mouth. You have to let people know what you're doing. Some of the language, you want to write this down, some of the language that I used when I first started, I didn't have any deals, but I let people know that I'm in the real estate business and I'm going to be working with investors that buy sometimes 5 to 10 houses per month. Letting folks know that you are in the house buying business, that they're buying properties in any situation, any condition, and any location. Getting some business cards made. I started out door knocking. In the beginning, I didn't even know about private eye, but I knew about the property data search, finding out who these absentee owners were. And I literally used to go and knock on their doors of their personal residences, just knocking on the door. And, if Dan came to the door, I was saying, hello, I'm looking for the property owner of 123 Main Street. I happen to be in the neighborhood. I couldn't find your phone number online, and I wanted to stop past because I'm interested in possibly purchasing that property. I had a hunger, and you got to have hunger in this business. When I first started out, I was hungry for a deal. I was looking for deals. We're coming close on time, so I'm going to run through these next couple of slides. But these next slides, once you start making money in your business, you want to invest into your business. So you can get a vehicle wrap, driving around town, or you could buy a U-Haul truck. A lot of folks call this big boy marketing. You can find a U-Haul truck on Craigslist right now anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500. Getting it wrapped may cost you another $2,000 to $3,000, and you can park these U-Haul trucks all around your marketplace with your phone number or your website, okay? And it's totally legal. If you're looking for a vehicle wrap, there's a franchise called fastsigns.com. You can get vehicle wraps done at fastsigns.com. They have different locations all over the country in your marketplace. Business cards. You want to get business cards. Definitely want to get business cards with a compelling message. Here's an example of a business card. We buy houses cash. Sell your home in 9 days or less. When you're out cruising for cash, strolling for dollars, when you're at the courthouse, Dan talked about it earlier. He was thinking that we were waiting for angry landlords to come in. Angry landlords do come into the courthouse to file these evictions, having flyers, having, postcards. When you're driving for cash, when you're down at the courthouse doing research, handing your information out, your contact information. Are there any vacant houses in your neighborhood? This is an example of one of the postcards that we actually use and one of the flyers that we use with a compelling message, hitting different points where people may be at in life with properties that they own, like people behind on taxes, a vacant house, someone that is retiring, downsizing, relocating, job transfer, divorce, code violations. You're going to see a lot of code violations right now because folks don't have the money to keep their properties upkept, keep the upkeep of these properties. And you want to have a call to action on your marketing piece. Call us now with your phone number. So online marketing, we talked about online classifieds, social media, Facebook, video marketing. For some reason, Backpage.com, this is going into online marketing classifieds. Backpage.com is a great place to start marketing for motivated sellers. The reason why I like Backpage.com, and I'm not really tech savvy, but for some reason Google loves Backpage. They actually rank Backpage postings on Google. So if you're in your marketplace under We Buy Houses Detroit or We Buy Houses North Carolina and you're consistently doing Backpage ads, your ad could show up on the first or second page of Google. I don't know what it is, but Google loves Backpage. I've never seen a Craigslist ad posted on the first or second page of Google, come up on the first or second page of Google. So Backpage.com, a lot of people on the call today probably haven't heard of it. It's a classified ad website. It's not as big as Craigslist, but the biggest search engine in the world right now is loving Backpage.com. So check out Backpage.com. And your social medias, Facebook, Twitter. Right now you can find us on Facebook, APN Homebuyers, on Twitter, APN Homebuyers. You can join the movement at Flop to Flip Nation. Our fan page, we're also on Twitter as well. This is a great place to advertise your house buying business, starting a social media page. And video marketing is huge. Video marketing is huge. Recently, we've been featured on several different news medias here locally, and we just uploaded that footage onto YouTube. This builds credibility. You don't have to be featured on your news stations in your marketplace, especially if you're just starting out. You're probably not going to get that type of exposure, but you can start getting footage of folks that you've done business with. I'm huge on testimonials. I'm very huge on testimonials. Everybody, not everybody, but most of the folks that we've either bought or sold a property to, we get a video testimony and we upload that to YouTube. And the reason why we do that, when we're dealing with a potential motivated seller, we may get their email and we'll send them a link to someone that we think that could relate to their situation, and they'll see this video and they'll be able to relate to a person that has sold us or bought a property from us, which adds credibility to our business. And if you're just starting out and you don't have any testimonials, you can do a commercial for your business letting someone know exactly what you do. And folks, these videos go viral, meaning they travel the internet, and you never know where they're going to land and who they're going to land in front of. So starting a YouTube channel is very important. Google owns YouTube, so it goes hand in hand. I'm going to go into the equation, and Dan touched on something earlier, how he's come across properties in Detroit where more is owed as far as taxes than what the property is actually worth. And a lot of my clients, my coaching clients, have run into the same hurdle. And not only that, running into properties where they can't figure out the after repair value. Now, this equation, it takes you through how to figure out how much you need to be offering to a potential motivated seller. Now, there are still marketplaces where you can find retail sales. But right now, in 2011, we're in a buy and hold market, okay? There are not a lot of rehabbers out here flipping houses for profit. They're buying properties to hold them as rentals. I'm not even going to go over this equation because I know in my marketplace and in a lot of your marketplaces, you're experiencing the same thing where you cannot find recent retail sales. So before I go into that, I have another success story. This is showing you wholesaling works. LaShawna May, $10,000 on one of her first deals. She did another deal where she made $4,000. And LaShawna used a word-of-mouth strategy, just letting people know, she was in the house buying business. She picked up 3 deals. These were 2 properties that she put under contract where she made this $10,000, and then she did another deal for $4,000. But it was all word-of-mouth marketing that she used. LaShawna is a single mom here in Baltimore. She works a 9-to-5 in the healthcare industry for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and she realized profits recently for over $10,000 wholesaling real estate. Now, I like to keep it simple. We're talking about the AIP, and this is talking about how to figure out, values. Now, we're in a buy and hold market. Dan said it. He knows properties are worth like $50 to $60, but the properties are, they have taxes on them, old taxes of over $5,000 to $6,000. So there's no deals there. So the way you need to figure out deals, this is how you're going to figure out deals. The AIP. I call this the average investor's pay. You need to find out what the average price investors are paying in your marketplace. That's where you can realize your profits. So going into your property data search, finding out what investors are paying. So let's go back to those other slides where we were talking about absentee owners. These are investors. And also we're going to talk about the GoSection8.com website. If you want to really get in the trenches and find out what investors are paying, you got to research the recent sales. And you can access this through your property data search locally or your appraiser's website. This is going to give you recent transactions. You also can purchase software out here to help you find these recent transactions, but you're looking for the recent transactions. There are transactions between 2009 and 2011. These were the transactions where investors started buying properties cash. In my marketplace, you can actually see the price an investor paid. So for this property here in Cold Spring, you're not going to see it here because I wasn't able to screenshot the entire page, but it's going to give me the most recent transaction history. So if I see that this property was sold for $20,000 and I've came across a property in my marketplace that is a potential motivated seller, and I reach out to this seller and they ask, how much am I willing to pay? I already know that I'm not going to pay $20,000 because I've done some due diligence and I saw several investors pay around $20,000. So as a wholesaler, I know I need to come in under $20,000 to even have a chance of wholesaling this property for profit. So my first offer would be around $8,000 to $10,000. I want to build a negotiation cushion because I know that investors are paying up to $20,000 for property. So in Detroit, if I see that investors are paying $5,000 for properties, I know that for one, the taxes that are owed on a property cannot exceed that $5,000, or I won't make any profit, and my buyer probably will be bringing money to the settlement table. We'll be paying over the $5,000 if there's taxes owed on that property. But if I see that Dan is paying $5,000 for properties, I know I need to contract deals anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to put myself in a position to make a profit. Now, a question that you probably are asking yourself right now is, well, how are you figuring out repairs? How are you figuring out repairs? Well, I just showed you, the AIP, the average investor pays. So if you, it's not rocket science, folks. If you see investors on average are paying $20,000 in your marketplace for property, or $5,000, okay, and then you see a few investors paying $30,000 to $40,000 for properties, you need to know that those properties, this is a rule of thumb, and the experienced seasoned wholesaler that's on this training can probably relate to this. The more you see an investor paying, is probably that property that they're paying $30,000 to $40,000, and you see other investors are paying $20,000. That property is probably in better condition as far as repairs needed. It's probably in better condition as far as the properties that are being bought in the $20,000 price range. So keep that in mind. The higher an investor is paying for a property, the better the condition of that property is. The less, the less amount that they're paying, that property probably needs some type of repairs. Dan, if you're still with me, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, like you said, it's not rocket science. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. It's on the numbers. I mean, I'm still wondering though. I'm still sitting here thinking, okay, well, that's what you pay for it. But if the people got to come to the table with money they don't have, how do you get them to the table?
Well, this is one thing that you can do, Dan. A lot of times when we're in situations like that, especially if we're targeting tax sales, if we're talking a property that's in tax sale and the tax sale amount is a lot higher than what you had the property under contract for, then it's not. We won't even go after that deal for one, and it's not going to be a deal unless that motivated seller is very, very motivated and willing to bring cash to the table to make it a deal. Make sense there?
Yeah, but how do you get the numbers to crunch? So you showed those pictures of all those properties. You know, I mean, I'm just going to give you a scenario in Detroit.
Okay.
You know, they owe $7,000 in back taxes.
Right.
So you're looking at that, and you want to wholesale it, and this is what you're going to find in Detroit anyway. I mean, I've got no doubt because I've done it.
Okay.
So you're going to find houses that they owe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and it's ready to hit the blocks in I forgot, March or April or whenever they actually hit the auction block after 3 years of non-payment,
Right.
or going into the third year of non-payment. So it's they owe $7,000, and you're looking at the property thinking, well, if I'm going to wholesale that, I need to get it for $2,000.
Right.
But that's like really common. Like that's like what's out there.
Wow, in your marketplace. And then Detroit is a really, really depressed market right now. The only thing I can tell you is to try to avoid those type of deals. I'm pretty sure all the properties that are vacant in that marketplace aren't in that situation. The only thing is you have to find out the average investors are paying first. You have to find out the average price investors are paying. So if you see that there's $7,000 in back taxes, and you know that investors are only paying $5,000 to $7,000, there's no way you can construct that deal unless those taxes are paid off by that property owner, or that investor is willing to knock out that $7,000 in taxes and willing to hold that property until they make that money back. There's no way to get around a tax lien.
Right. So
if
it goes into that third year, though, that's where then all of a sudden the city now takes control of the property, and then it goes into a tax sales certificate thing, which is the other end of the investing that you had done previously.
Yes, and that takes money. So when you're wholesaling, you gotta find properties where there is actual equity to be realized. The property is valued at more than what's owed.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So market research, you're gonna eventually have to learn repairs. You're not gonna be able to go off of that strategy all the time. So how to learn repairs? You need to start recruiting contractors into your business. This goes into building a team. Also talking to folks like Dan who buy properties to rehab these properties. Just shadowing them for a day, letting them know that you're gonna eventually send them some really good deals, but you want to know, what you're looking for. What types of properties are you looking for? Getting out in the trenches, visiting their projects, gaining knowledge just from being around a more experienced investor. Calling a real estate agent. It's all about building relationships. Calling real estate agents up in your marketplace, seeing if they're willing to work with a new investor, a new wholesaler, letting them know that you're going to be in contact with rehabbers who are looking to list properties after they renovate them. You got to let folks know what's in it for them as well. You want to always add value to someone else's business. You can use Google. We went over that earlier. You can do market research using Google. If you type in an address in some marketplaces, you can actually see what properties are actually on the market in that marketplace. So you can get a feel for that marketplace. Pulling comps, I'm actually going to go into that and give you a free resource, and get on other wholesalers' email lists, getting on their mailing list, seeing, getting on the #1 or the top wholesalers in your marketplace, getting on their email list, and just studying them, modeling their marketing strategies, modeling their neighborhoods, where they're targeting. You can pretty much see a trend in some of the top wholesalers in your marketplace. They pretty much will stay in certain neighborhoods than others. So going into those neighborhoods where you see other wholesalers having success. As far as pulling comps, this is a website that I've been also using for years, Remax.com. Remax.com is linked to the MLS. you can type in the address of a property. Say you're putting a property under contract or thinking about putting a property under contract that you came across and you want to know the value. Simply just by typing in the address, you can find out what investors are paying, because it's going to show you all the sales. And if there are any retail sales, recent retail sales in that area. So remax.com is an easy and fast way, and it's totally free, to find out what properties are going for in certain neighborhoods in your marketplace. So you found a motivated seller. You are trying to put this property under contract. This is where the rubber really meets the road, folks. You have to know how to negotiate. And I have a step-by-step method that I've used for years to negotiate really deeply discounted deals. And I call it negotiating like a champ. You first want to find out why that person wants to sell. Now, I know you cold calling these folks, and one of the reasons why is that they're probably vacant properties. So you already know that in the back of your mind going into the conversation. But once they tell you that they are interested in selling, one of the first questions you want to ask is, why are you selling? Now, I never ask a potential motivated seller, you know, how much is the house going for? How much is the house for sale for? I always ask, how much money do you need for the property, after I ask them why they're selling or why they need to sell this property. Then you want to go into a little more details about this property. And this is all over the phone if they're calling you or if you're calling them, because I know some of you will be using the Bandit strategy. But you want to find out some information on the property, the condition of the property. You want to find out how many bedrooms are in the property. A rule of thumb, we tend to stay away from 2-bedroom properties. 2 reasons. Number one, they're hard to resell and they're hard to rent. So if you're looking to wholesale a 2-bedroom property, you need to make sure you're getting it at a really cheap price, because 2 bedrooms are not that attractive for investors or homeowners. You want to ask repair questions as well. And I like starting in the kitchen and the bathroom. Dan, I know you rehab properties, and you've probably, I know you probably analyze a lot of deals through the MLS. And when you walk into a property as a rehabber, 2 of the first places you go and that you look at is the kitchen and the bathroom. If the kitchen and the bathroom are in disrepair, then you know there's probably some other issues around that house. So one of the questions that we ask over the phone is what condition, 2 of the questions is what condition is the kitchen and the bathroom in? Have you done any recent updates? And then some of the next questions that I ask about repairs is, how are the mechanicals of the property? Has the electrical been updated? How's the plumbing? And the whole time I'm asking these questions, I'm taking down notes. I'm taking notes down. And I talked about asking how much do they need, and then I'm scheduling a meeting. So if Dan was selling a property and I'm meeting Dan at this property, and I've already talked to him, I've already kind of built a little bit of rapport with him. When I meet Dan at the property, I'm introducing myself. Hey, Dan, it's really great to finally get a chance to meet you. Let's go inside this property and see what's going on. And we'll go inside the property and pay close attention to this next bit of information I'm about to share with you. This is very important. As we walk through this property, I have that repair, I have my notes from that previous conversation. And remember, I asked Dan, you know, what repairs were needed to the house, and he gave me, you know, a few answers. The kitchen may have been in disrepair, the bathroom, but Dan may have missed some things. You know, he didn't tell me that the roof had a leak. He didn't tell me that the floor on the first floor was buckling due to water damage in the basement. You know, there were some other unforeseen repairs that weren't talked about over the phone. And I also found out how much he needed over the phone. Now, a lot of times you may be dealing with investors or property owners that don't want to give you a price. They may say, well, you give me an offer. I don't want to tell you how much I need. A rebuttal that you can use over the phone is, well, Dan, I usually don't make offers over the phone. and until I inspect the property. Well, you know, I need to see the property before I can make an offer to you. So you never want to make an offer without seeing the property first until you know your marketplace.
You know, something just dawned on me. I think it would be a blast. Is let's kind of cut through this negotiation piece and then hang up and maybe actually do a webinar on negotiation. It could be even a 15-minute little webinar. I think it'd be a riot because I'm seeing things here that are cool, and then I see things where I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting because he asked how much they need. And it's funny because me personally, I didn't use that strategy because I found out that a lot of times what they needed and what the property needed, the tax ID number, the parcel number, the actual property needed to be free and clear were two different things. They need $1,500 because they need to go get a rental because they just need to be done with this property. But what the city's saying is, hey, man, we need $4,200 in back taxes, and you know what I mean? So like I found out just because what they needed. It's just funny. I just think it's interesting. It's a fun conversation because negotiation is a blast. I mean, I found it to be my favorite part. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of times people don't like that because our culture doesn't. We don't like to negotiate. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not raised to negotiate like, say, an Arabic market. You know, oh man, that's all about negotiation. That's it. The whole conversation is negotiation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you to touch on that. Thinking about that tax issue up in Detroit. In Baltimore, we do have a tax abatement program.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of red tape and it's a lot of paperwork, and it takes longer than 30 days to get these taxes abated. So if you come across properties in your marketplace that you want to buy or you want to wholesale, you can possibly go through your municipality if the city takes these properties back and get these taxes abated and gain control of these properties. But it's a lot of red tape involved.
Yeah. You know what? I think you're refreshing my memory. I think that is exactly what I recall from those situations was tax abatement. And once all that started happening, I was like, oh no, I am not interested, man, because I just didn't want to be slowed down. You know, I wanted to go on to the next deal. So anyway.
Absolutely. Well, we're winding down this training. Dan, thanks for interjecting. We could have been 30, 40 minutes into that negotiation segment right there.
Yeah, let's just do one on it. In fact, what we'll do is we'll have a link. Maybe we won't do it today, but we'll have a link to that, and him and I will just discuss the different negotiation strategies, the stuff that you actually talk to the people, and maybe share some. It's probably better just to actually share exact scenarios because I've got some pretty funny stories, and I'm sure you do too, and things that we use to negotiate. So we'll do that. Cool.
Absolutely. So I'm going to get right into marketing. I mean, I think, Dan, we've given them enough information where they can go out, find properties, get properties under contract, find motivated sellers, find buyers. I really love marketing, and I call this the breakdown. When you're posting your properties on a Craigslist, when you're posting your properties to these classified ads online, these other classified websites, you need a breakdown. I always list several things: the property address, and I never list the exact property address because I want to get people to call me. So if it's a deal, they're going to call you anyway, but I also want to make it enticing for someone to call me from one of my advertisements. So I'll put like the 3200 block of Main Street, Baltimore, Maryland. The price, of course, you need the price to let these investors know what you're wholesaling the property for. You want to list repairs if you know repairs. If you don't know repairs, you can simply say needs rehab or needs cosmetics. But I'm a rehabber. I know what it takes to renovate a property depending on what type of condition it's in. The ARV, that's the after repair value, knowing what properties are selling for after it's been renovated. But a lot of marketplaces right now, like Detroit, like Baltimore, there aren't a lot of properties being renovated and sold right now. There's a lot of properties being just bought and hold. So you want to put the AIP, the average investor pays. So we'll put average investors are paying $70,000 to $80,000, but we're selling this house for $50,000. So it's a great deal. We're also putting rent comps up because we're in a buy and hold market, letting investors know how much rent they can get for their properties. A great online resource is Zilpy.com, Zilpy.com. Also giving your potential buyers an exit strategy. I love giving my buyers more than one exit strategy. You can even give them 3. Buy and hold. This deal, they could have done a buy and hold or fix and flip. Or also, a lot of investors are doing rent-to-owns. They know that folks are having trouble with getting mortgages now, and a lot of folks' credit are shot. They're selling properties on rent-to-own terms. Comparable sales. We went over Remax.com and the description about the property. We love writing stories about properties and taking pictures of the properties and contact numbers. We've even implemented videos. This is actually an advertisement that we send out to all of our buyers on our email list. One has a compelling headline. This property will pay for itself, guaranteed. Turnkey property in East Baltimore. We'll give them a location. Remember, I never give the exact address because I want to give investors the opportunity to, and I want to entice them to reach out to me to find out exactly where the property is. If you look at these pictures, this house looks almost renovated, and it's sold for $17,000. I actually put this property under contract for $800. I'm sorry, not $800, $8,000, and I ended up selling this property a little less than $17,000. I put the rents, as you saw in the deal breakdown, the exit, buy and hold. The headline was, this property will pay for itself, guaranteed. There weren't any retail comps here, so I didn't even list the retail comps, but it was a really good deal. Dan, $900 to $1,000 for rent, $17,000 property. This is a no-brainer deal, right?
Yeah, because usually I look at the yeah, it's pretty much a no-brainer. Yeah,
it's a no-brainer. This house could be paid off in a little over a year. And repairs, as you see in the pictures, is a touch-up job, and then we have a story. You can pay this house off in no time with crazy cash flow, with this crazy cash flow opportunity. This property has new windows, new flooring, new furnace, and much, much more. And also, I'm always trying to add value to someone's business. Ask about our tenant placement service and my contact number. So this is a deal breakdown, pretty much jazzed up. This is in our email marketing, but this is the same breakdown that I just went over. We don't really have time to go through this wholesale deal launch, but I have a website that I'm going to give you access to where you can actually download this, and it goes through a wholesale deal launch. As soon as you get a property under contract, each step that you need to do to get that property sold, from online and offline marketing. And we went pretty much through this throughout the training, finding buyers through GoSection8.com, finding buyers going down to the courthouse, finding buyers cruising for cash, cruising for buyers.
They can freeze the video and watch this and look at this.
Absolutely. Okay. And, there's another success story here of someone that I've helped wholesale deals, Chris Schuler. This guy is a contractor, actually, just had 2 newborn twin babies and knew that he needed another stream of income to support the lifestyle that he wanted to provide for his family. And 7 steps to getting to the closing table. I'm going to run through this really quick, and you can freeze this, like Dan said, and take these down. But you want to collect your prospective buyer's contact information. When they call you from one of your marketing pieces, you want to get their full name, you want to get their email, and you want to get their direct phone number. You also want to get their mailing address. Have them fax or email you over proof of funds. We call it POFs. If they're interested in your property, and collect at least $1,000 in certified funds, whether it's cash, a money order, or certified check. You want to have that check written out to your title company. Get that check in your hand. Get them to sign your assignment contract. We don't have time to go through the contracts on this call, but we can. I'm pretty sure Dan has some resources for you as far as going through assignment contracts and sales contracts. But once they agree to buying your property, you want to give them a copy of your assignment contract and your original sales contract. And you also want to expedite settlement. Title companies, a lot of title companies are busy right now. You can actually go down to your local land records office, your local municipality, and pull the lien sheet. This is one of the most important parts of the title work, finding out what is owed on that property. This will expedite the time. It takes about 3 to 4 days in my marketplace. If you go through a title company, it may take them 2 weeks to get the lien sheet, the lien report.
Who pays for title work on your deals?
We have the buyers, or the buyers actually pay on our deals most of the time, or we split the cost of stamps and recordation, or sometimes the sellers pay. It depends on how you negotiate that deal, and that goes into negotiations. But a lien sheet only costs in our marketplace about $55. So that could be an out-of-pocket expense to you up front, but you can end up getting that back at settlement. Are you experiencing the same thing in your marketplace, Dan?
Yeah, well, I haven't been doing this like this. I mean, like I said, the wholesaling thing is something I'm definitely looking at getting into. But I'm intrigued by this idea of getting the lien sheet versus just having. You're saying you do that because you're trying to expedite getting to the closing table. You're trying to hurry that up. So if you get the lien sheet in advance, you can provide that to the title company. Is that what this is, or?
Yes, you will provide the lien sheet to the title company by going down to your land record or your municipality office where they issue these lien sheets. Actually, you go to the lien office. In our marketplace, we actually go to the tax lien office to pull these lien sheets. On the lien sheet, it would have any type of code enforcement fines, any type of water bills, unpaid water bills, property taxes. Also, any mechanical liens. If a contractor put a lien on a property, you can get that information up front. It takes about 3 to 4 days in my marketplace, but this will help you expedite your settlements, getting to the settlement table in 2 to 3 weeks, less than 30 days.
Got it.
So instead of waiting 2 weeks for your title company to, outsource that out, you can actually go down and get it done yourself. And staying in contact, constant contact with the title company, with the seller of the property and the buyer. And your title company is key because they're going to orchestrate the deal. Giving the title company the seller's contact information and the buyer's contact information will pretty much take you out of that process, which will give you the time to find more deals, find more buyers, find more sellers.
All right, and since you're talking about this piece of the closing, do you sell the contract? Do you sell the actual paper? Do you sell you do it with the assignment contract? Are you selling the assignment contract, or are you selling the LLC that tied it up?
Well, we do it a couple of different ways. As someone new just starting out, I'm just going to talk about the assignment contract. Basically, an assignment contract is you're selling your equitable interest in the original sales contract for a fee. So if I have a property in Detroit that Dan's interested in, that I have under contract, I'll show Dan my assignment contract. I'll let him know what my fee is. My fee is going to be $2,000 for this contract of a property that I have, Dan, for $500. So you're going to get a property at total cost of $2,500, but you're basically buying my equitable interest from my contract that I have with the original owner for $500. Make sense?
Yep. But it's just that whole bird dog and the legalities behind all that.
Absolutely.
Those are things I like to touch on a little bit, but we've run out of time a little bit only because I don't want people to get frustrated and say, hey, this is almost a 2-hour webinar. But
Right. Well, I hope it was
been good contact, though, man. The content has been phenomenal, and I'm sure everybody listening is going to agree. It's been great content.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, Dan. And for folks, I actually have a blog that you can reach me on at floptoflipnation.com. I also have a free 28-day mini course where I take you through a step-by-step 28-day course as far as how to find a deal and how to get to the settlement table at flopthe2wholesaling.com. But Dan, it was great. Thanks for having me. This was my first webinar. I hope I was able to add value to yourself and to your followers listening in. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, it was awesome to have you here, and I mean, I kind of did a pre-close there just because I mean, you rocked it out, man. I'm gonna make sure I let the guys and gals on JV Update know as well.
Okay.
It's just been great content, really good content. I mean, just walking away with people say you can walk away with one good thing. I mean, I've been studying this stuff since I was 14 years old. I'm 43, and I walked away with a couple really cool ideas, especially on this wholesaling end of just strategies. I love the idea of going down and looking for, as you call them, pinks.
Yeah.
Going down and looking for the violations, looking for, getting there's a great way to develop your buyer stream as these landlords. I mean, what a cool idea. And
Absolutely.
the fact that, like you said, public record. So, hey, anyway, in closing, you've given out the .coms. You can repeat those. If you want to repeat those one more time, that'd be cool.
Yes, it's www.floptoflipnation.com and I'm actually typing them up for you, Dan. www.floptoflipwholesaling.com, where you can get your free 28-day course. And I'm going to see if I can blow these sites up for you really quick.
Yeah, that's cool. And so while he's doing that, everybody, again, I mean, you definitely got some great value here. I'd encourage you to go check out those websites. It's awesome to have him here on Do Deals. As one of the people here, one of the great teachers, just showing you how to do it. And you can always tell when we've got somebody here at Do Deals that I'm interviewing for a webinar as a guest. I mean, you definitely know that this is real stuff. I mean, they're giving you the keys to the kingdom here. I mean, they're showing you how to do what they do on a daily basis. They're spilling their beans. They're not just telling you about, I've got a great idea, and going through 42 slides and not giving you any ideas. I mean, these are actual actionable steps. So I encourage you to visit these websites, and if you're feeling stuck as a real estate investor, again, I deal with the psychology of the entrepreneur. That's one of the things I do as a coach. You can check out tdannichols.com. That's tdannichols.com as well. But be sure to check out flipwholesaling.com for that free 28-day report or course, and get your boots on the ground. Make it happen. And with that, I close out. Thank you so much.
Take care, Dan. Thanks, everybody. Bye.